Hello, welcome back to Ycft. Insidious The Red Door is right around the corner. In fact, if I've planned this right, it's probably going to be next week. So we're continuing talking about the Insidious films. The reason we're not looking at 3 or 4 is because they are actually prequels.
Yes.
And the new film will take place X amount of 10 years?
Yeah, so I think what is like the actual chronology of Insidious? It's
3, 4, 1, 2, 5. That is the chronology. So it's X amount of years after the ending of after the events of this film.
Yeah.
And this film takes place, even though it was released in 2013, also directed by James Wan, like the original one, and written by Lee Winnell, following the same family.
Yeah, the Lamberts. This
actually came out it was 2 years after Insidious, and Blumhouse were desperate for them to do a sequel, but they initially didn't write Insidious as a franchise.
No, they never intended it to be even just one sequel. Yeah.
For a long time, the two of them were known for Saw. They were the ones who ushered in the torture porn era, and James Wan, he never liked that.
Yeah.
So they constantly tried to reinvent themselves. Dead Silence kind of didn't do that well. I always see Insidious as like the spiritual successor of Dead Silence. They kind of then like chaperoned us into a new supernatural era. So in between Insidious and Insidious Chapter 2, they made a little film known as The Conjuring.
They did.
Which actually was released a month before Insidious 2.
2013 was a great year for James Wan.
And they say that when you watch Chapter 2, it looks and feels a lot like The Conjuring. This had double the budget of the first one, which still only took it to like 5 million. It wasn't a massive budget. I think the most... I think these films are stupidly profitable.
Yes. Yeah.
The biggest budget any of them had was like Insidious Chapter 3 had 11.
Yeah.
And Insidious Chapter 4 had 10.
And 10.
So this had double the budget of the first one. But they clearly took everything they learned from working on The Conjuring and applied to this, and there's a polish about it. And personally, I think this is the best Insidious film.
We like Chapter 2. We are big fans of it. And I keep racking my brains. Like I go back and forwards as to, which one is my favourite. And I think currently 2 is my top Insidious movie.
We think 3 is the scariest.
Yes.
But 2 is the best well constructed, best acted.
I agree. I like what it does with the family in this
synopsis. We better talk about where the family's been left off. So Dalton has been rescued from the fervor. He is back in his body.
He's back.
At the end of the last film, Josh, played by Patrick Wilson, did not come back.
His
spirit
body did.
known as the Bride in Black has possessed his body and killed Elise, the psychic medium.
Yes.
And that is literally where this film picks up. It picks up like right after that. Like
directly continues from where we left off, which I really like for a sequel to do that.
So the Bride in Black, who there's a name, Parker Crane, we know who they are now. Because it's a man. Even in the first, like the Bride was literally just meant to be creepy for creepy's sake, and actually has a lot of comparisons with the lead ghost in Dead Silence, whose name I was going to say cannot for the life of me remember.
It's Mary someone, isn't it? Yeah, but physically they are very similar. I mean, in Dead Silence, I think it's actually a woman, but in the first Insidious, whenever we see the Bride in Black, it's actually played by a guy. And the reason for that, because again, they never intended for there to be a backstory with the Bride in Black when they were making the first Insidious, but James Wan cast a man in the role just for kind of like that added off-kiltedness. You look at a character and you think there's something not quite right. And I guess it's the same thing like in Pet Sematary with, Zelda, the sister up in the attic, who's also played by a dude. And it's like when you look at them, there is just something inherently very kind of creepy. About it.
That character that exploded in popularity, so basically became like what the main villain.
Yeah.
And arch nemesis of Elise. Yeah.
The lipstick face demon.
Yeah.
I guess.
I have a problem with the Insidious franchise and their use of the lipstick face demon.
Okay.
Mainly there's minor spoilers throughout this, but he is referenced in pretty much
all of them. Film. Like most of them.
This film kind of ends with what you hear the noise that is associated with him. It's like, all right, cool, that's a hint. But also, let's bear in mind, even though we've had 2 more sequels, we've never had that confirmed. Like, this film it's been 10 years. And we're finally getting a follow-up to that.
Oh my God.
He has a jump scare at the end of Chapter 3, which...
Totally unwarranted.
Really isn't unwarranted, and one at the end of 4, which works so much better, but it just wasn't needed in 3. So he's how much better would it have been if we'd not seen the lipstick face demon since?
I totally
properly
agree.
seen him since the first one.
I totally agree.
Because we know he's in the trailer. We know he's going to be in the next one.
The thing is like lipstick face demon, I associate as Dalton's demon.
Yeah.
You know, like he has a thing going on with Dalton, much like the Bride in Black has a thing going on with Josh, Patrick Wilson's character. So, I mean, I kind of have issues with 3 as much as I do find it an effective movie with what they did with the Bride in Black's character and Elise, like making them kind of like arch nemesis. Like that doesn't work.
I think it's the way to present. I think when you lay it out, it actually does work.
I have problems with it.
But yeah, I like they've got an investigation and say that
it is an investigation. Yeah.
It's
Trying to figure out who this bitch was.
Apparently, Josh's fingerprints don't match now.
The Elise's strangulation marks. Yeah, so he's off the hook.
So obviously Rose Byrne finds the photo, and the photo would have been of the Bride in Black.
Yes.
Why are you looking at me like that? You think I did this?
That's it. Life goes on now, and
life goes on, but there's something not quite right with Josh.
People refer to him as Parker Josh, so that's what I'm going to call him, Parker Josh.
With it. Okay.
Parker Josh is just doing Josh's life. Josh is trapped in the fervour.
But there's something.
They move into Josh's old childhood home.
Yeah. Yes, they do. They move in with Lorraine, who is the grandma. She's also in the first movie, played by Barbara Hershey. They move into her house, which I have to say, absolutely stunning home, but very James Wan.
Oh, the James Wan house. Yeah.
Very kind of like, traditionally Victorian, very kind of inherently gothic. There's dark wallpaper, there's dark oak wood panelling everywhere.
Random red.
Just random red. And it's like, I do really like it. I get a kick out of it because that's a house I would kill to live in. But I just like, again, like this is nitpicking, but I just find it a little bit hard to believe that Lorraine, as a single grandma, would be living in like a 6-bedroom Victorian mansion without updating it with like any kind of major mod cons. Like at least have, I don't know, a bit of lighter wallpaper or something. It's like, it's just a bit hard for me to believe that she's living in like this very old decrepit mansion. But that's just like, it's a James Wan thing. We'll talk about that as we go on.
I love the James Wan house.
The Wanism.
Yeah, so as this film goes on, Parker Josh is decaying.
Yes.
And he is
physically.
Like this, again, delves deeply into the backstory of Parker Crane, who the Bride in Black is. And I actually really like
I love the
all
backstory.
that. He's being haunted by the ghost of his abusive mother. What do we know what her name is?
Michelle.
She is fucking terrifying.
We'll move on properly to Michelle in a bit.
She is absolutely terrifying. We found that he was a serial killer known as the Bride in Black who would dress up, don
the costume,
kidnap purely women, and torture and kill them.
Yes.
And that is essentially what led to him being in the fervour. And he has been linked. He's been after Josh ever since he tried to castrate himself.
Yes.
And ended up in the hospital. And that's when he first encounters Josh, who was visiting his mum
who
at
was
work.
a nurse at the hospital.
And he kind of tries to go for him, and not long afterwards, jumps out of a window.
He kills himself whilst in the hospital.
Yeah. He envied the childhood that he didn't have.
Yeah.
Because of his mother.
Yes.
I feel we have to go straight into Michelle.
Okay.
Truly terrifying woman. And great performance. Utterly insane. Wasn't happy with having a son. Mm-hmm. It's almost weirdly sleepaway campy.
A little bit, yeah.
A little bit sleepaway campy. And we don't know who the father was. All we know is he's not in the picture anymore. And because at one point, Parker comes home and he's done a picture and signed off as Parker. And she's like, "That's not your name." She makes him dress like a woman. Makes him go by the name of Marilyn.
Your name
makes him wear a wig.
Is Marilyn.
My name is Parker. What is this? Did you do this? Don't you dare!
There's this theory that when people die, they go to the fervour, they tend to look how they look
when they die.
So she might have died when he was fairly young, but then has continued to haunt him and pushed him to kill in later life. And because obviously the scars that he's going to have as a child from that experience, he's never going to be okay. Gee, no wonder he became a serial killer.
Okay. So let's just backtrack a minute, because the Insidious 2, I love it, and I love that we kind of delve into the backstory of the Bride in Black, and I love that we get, like the pieces of the puzzle of Parker Crane and whatnot, the connection to Josh. But yeah, it starts with the mum. It starts with Michelle. I love, like, I find it fascinating that Parker was an abused child with a batshit insane, scary mother. But what the film suggests is it's not so much that Parker was so severely traumatized by his childhood and that's what led him to cross-dress and kill. It's heavily inferred that his mum, whether alive or in ghost form, is telling him to kill. I'm not sure if
I think it leads a little... Because there's a line where he's like, oh, I miss pain. I miss the paraphrase, miss the feel of pain, but not as much as I miss inflicting others. I think it's a little bit of both.
I missed it, but not as much as I miss inflicting it on others.
I think he does enjoy killing because of how he was raised.
But
I think his mum is just like... I think when he's an adult, I don't think she has to push him that hard.
That's the thing. It's like, to what extent is she the puppeteer? Like, how much is she telling him to... Like, did she tell him to don this particular costume, the Bride in Black? Or was that just something that Parker opted to do himself? And it's like, I only raise this because to some extent, I feel like it kind of affects how the audience can feel towards Parker, towards the Bride in Black. Because it's one thing to be presented with the backstory that he was an abused child. And, right, there's trauma that, there's clear, cause and effect. I mean, obviously being abused doesn't instantly turn you into a serial killer. That's kind of innately got to be there, I guess. But that's one thing. But then for the film to also posit that, well, maybe, he's kind of a victim too, because his mum is still controlling him and he tried to kill himself to escape his mother and all this stuff. So I feel like that's an important thing that we can't necessarily just kind of forget about.
You see, the way I always saw it was we are led to believe that as they're kind of investigating, we see how he was abused and what he eventually became. I think it does essentially hold our hand to feel a bit sorry for him, because when he's taking over Josh, I think he genuinely just wants to take over Josh's life. I don't think he means any harm to his family at first.
I don't think he intends to kill them, does he?
No, and
he just wants life. They crave life.
But later on, when he does have to kind of go back to his old ways, you can see he does enjoy it. Oh. So I think that's when, as the audience, we're meant to be. It's not just it. You do enjoy doing this. As we find, the further is explored in a much better way in this film. Personally. Yeah. So it's kind of more heavily established that the red doors lead to different areas, different presences kind of live there. Yeah. And time is kind of all over the place. At least that amazing scene where you've got Josh going back to his own home within the further. And the scenes in the original film where the alarm's gone off when the door's opening and you see the ghoul demon lurking over his child. Considering none of this was planned, we see how all of that happens and it ties in so perfectly.
It's so well done.
Amazingly done. Like I said, wasn't planned to have a sequel.
No.
And right, a filmmaker standpoint, they had to be so precise.
Very meticulous.
But we know that time doesn't really mean anything in the further either, because we have an opening scene with Josh as a child, with a young Elise, with really weirdly dubbed voice with Lin Shaye.
May I meet him?
Yes. The actress that they have to play a younger version of her, I think, who physically
looks a lot like her.
Great casting, but they should have just allowed the actress to speak normally. We would have understood, we would have got it. But the fact that they used Lin Shaye, who was I think in her 60s at the time, probably when she was doing Insidious, to dub herself, but a younger version of herself, just doesn't quite work.
Yeah.
But
I saw it once, and it's not a friend. It's a parasite. I've never felt such a malignant presence. It wants to be him.
But this is maybe the precursor to the photos from the original one, which always creeps me out, seeing the photos of the brides getting closer and closer.
It's really reaching out for him, yeah.
So this is that moment where Josh meets Elise and we find out what's going on. Weird thing, he starts talking to himself, going off, pointing, a door's open. It doesn't make any sense until later on when they realise it's older version of Josh visiting younger version of Josh in the further. And it just makes the place feel so much more interesting. But the problem I have in the sequels, when they keep bringing back the Bride in Black and the lipstick-faced demons, it makes the Fervor feel very small.
Yes.
And
yes,
this is the best way it's ever portrayed. But right, we know that within the Bride in Black's area of the Fervor are the memories of his mother. So it's theorized that there's actually two versions of Michelle. The actual ghost one that we see in the house
when she hit
haunting
Don't
Rose,
you dare!
slaps Rose Byrne. There's an actual ghost who is haunting them.
Actively haunting the house.
Kelly! Kelly! My baby, Kelly! Kelly! Don't you dare!
Yeah.
But then there's the memories of her within Parker's section of the Fervor, who's obviously a lot more demonic, how he would remember her. So is he actually being haunted by the ghost, or is he being haunted by
the memory
of
his mom?
And which leads all the way back to the trauma he suffered as a child.
Yeah.
It makes it, he's a very, very interesting character.
Because there's that moment as well where Patrick Wilson, like Parker Josh, where he's kind of crumbling.
Can we just say that Patrick Wilson, so he's basically playing two roles in this, and he is stellar in this film.
I want to highlight him in a bit. Yeah, he's fantastic. But yeah, there's this particular scene where he's starting to crumble. Family's starting to cotton on. Something's not right with Josh.
You've got to go. You have to go.
It was Daddy,
You have to.
and he was talking to someone.
So the plan is kind of falling to pieces at this point, and we see him talking to his mum. Like, we don't see her, but we see him in his mind.
You kind of see like a brief silhouette of her through like the shower curtain.
And he's like, don't make me kill her. Please don't. I don't want to kill her. I don't want to kill her. And she's like, oh, you have to, something like that. Like forcing him to kill Renee.
Yeah, so if he kills, that'll stop the decay. And it's like, that is most likely a lie.
So it's like...
Is he being hot? Is that the ghost, or is that the killer part of him?
Yeah. Is he just psychologically linking everything back to his mum?
Yeah. Is it just a metaphor for nature versus nurture?
Yeah.
It's
That's
fascinating.
Parenting,
it really
man.
is.
Like it's responsible for a lot.
Also, the production is like James Wan, the way he handles a camera moving through a house. Like the scene where Rose Byrne's going through, and you see like Michelle just kind of like sat in a chair. Then the typical thing goes past, and she's gone. You saw behind the scenes where you literally see after the camera's moving past, she just gets up and runs out.
She just fucking runs for her life out of the shot, which is like, it's like the only way that they could do it. But yeah, it's something that House on Haunted Hill employed, I guess more recently, just having ghosts kind of in the background.
Haunting of Hill House, you mean?
Haunting of Hill House, sorry. Like if you blink and you miss them. And James Wan kind of plays with that here, and it's done so well. We see it in the first Insidious too. Especially
The Conjuring. He's just really good at making... I'd say this is less so the Insidious because of the type of house they are, but with Conjuring and Insidious 2, making the house feel like a character and having the camera movements reflect that.
Totally. I mean, I do... You mentioned it, I think, when we were doing Insidious and Poltergeist, that video, where you said that James Wan can often be found guilty of, doing creepy for creepy's sake.
Yeah.
And I absolutely agree with that. And I think we see it a bit with the Bride in Black.
He actually said it in the Dead Silence video. He named something saying, it's creepy for being creepy.
It's creepy for being creepy.
He is responsible for doing that.
In the first Insidious, we've got that scene with Rose Byrne where, Tiptoe Through the Tulips is playing.
Oh.
And we see...
I hate that. It's so creepy.
It's so creepy. It's well done. I really enjoy that. But there's a rocking chair that's rocking on its own. I mean, is there an image more synonymous with horror than a rocking chair rocking by itself?
See, I'm half expecting to see a woman then being hung because of Woman in Black. That's how ingrained in my brain.
But then also, like, the Bride in Black herself, I mean, again, the first Insidious, they didn't have a backstory at that time. They just wanted to create something that is just so, like, shockingly, like, abominably scary. A woman in, like, a black veil with a creepy face, just, like, it's scary, but it's kind of scary for the sake of being scary.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I mentioned it before, Lorraine's house in this movie is very traditionally gothic with no real, like, rhyme or reason for it to be. Like, she could have easily just been living in, like, a nice standard, 2-bed house.
It's the same with Elise's house.
Elise's house, like, it's very old, and again, it's like, I feel like I'm wording it that it's a criticism, and it's not. It's more just an observation. But yeah, one does do like a lot of things. Like he opts for a lot of traditionally spooky production design. And again, I kind of like it. But yeah, it's just very James Wan at the end of the day, isn't it? But having said that, there is a scene I really love in this, Insidious 2. And it's the scene with Lorraine and Parker in the elevator.
Yes.
This, I think, is really well done. So Lorraine, at this point, the nurse, like we're flashbacking. She's in the elevator. She's at the hospital. In walks Parker. And she's a bit alarmed to see him. You know, he should be in bed. He's a patient. And he doesn't say anything. And they ride the elevator together. And then they stop at a floor. And he just kind of like glides. I mean, he walks, but he kind of just glides and then just disappears to the side. And she goes to a receptionist and she's like, what the fuck is this guy doing out of bed? Like, he should be resting. And that's when we find out that Parker died that morning.
He jumped.
That's when he had committed suicide. She's just ridden down in the lift with a ghost. And there's just something really eerie about it.
I think I said when we were watching it that it's almost like how an average person's ghost experience is. It's just something you can't explain.
Yes.
That's kind of what that scene is, because she probably never thought about that for years after that.
No, exactly. Like, that's it. Just there's something, it speaks as like a genuine ghost encounter. Like if someone was telling me, oh, I was a nurse and there was this one day in work where I was riding down in the elevator and there was this guy next, like I would totally believe that ghost story. Mm-hmm. There's just something that it seems like a very genuine spooky encounter. And I think it's really well done, really, really well employed. One
thing I really like, just a comparison with the original one, when it said like they didn't really have a plan for certain characters. All of Parker's victims, we kind of see them as ghosts. They're trying to like warn Dalton, and all of them, like something that the costume designer actually said, it's like when they were designing the costumes, each and every one of those characters has a backstory. We don't get to find out what they are, but their backstory influences what they are wearing. And I just love that level of detail.
It's that level of detail that, you know, like, unless you see the behind the scenes, the making of it, you're not really going to register it. But yeah, I totally appreciate that. There is a scene as well with Dalton and, what's his brother called? Foster.
I think so, yeah.
Everyone fucking forgets about Foster.
He's not really needed in the film.
He's not needed. But there's a scene, again, they're in Grandma's house at this point and they're sharing a bedroom again. Like, poor Foster probably thinks, fuck me. Like, please, Dalton, like, don't disappear into the further again. But they're both asleep. And they use that, what do you call that game? Like, where, you know, you have, like, the cup.
Oh, it's just like, you know, making a telephone from 2 cups and a piece of string.
Yeah. And he hears a voice coming through it. And he thinks it's his brother, and it's not. And then he realises the string is going into the cupboard. It's like Conjuring. Cupboard features quite heavily in that movie as well. And we see a woman at some point just instantly kind of bolt from the cupboard, scared, and she kind of cowers in the corner. And Dalton, petrified, but obviously realises it must be it's a dead woman. And she can't speak normally. She has to only speak through the thing, which is kind of black phony. Yeah. Now that I think about it, in a way, like she's lost her voice, but a victim of Parker Crane, and I think they're all trying to get through to him, aren't they?
But then they all kind of go for him when he realises that he's not in his body anymore. Yeah. He's projected.
And he has to wake himself up.
He has to jump back into his body, because they're going for him again. Like, he attracts the ghosts.
So that scene is very scary. Again, you know, playing on a fear of, you know, we all are scared what's in our cupboard at nighttime. Yeah. I love the discovery of the bodies as well. Yeah. That's very scary. You know, it's not what do you call it? Like, it's not gruesome. Like, they don't pull the sheets over and we see all the decomposing corpses, but like we can see
this hidden room, and it's almost like a church.
It's like a church, yeah, like a congregation.
Like a wedding.
Yeah, the bride in black, yeah. And like we can just see they're all covered with sheets, but all the sheets are kind of stained. And I think is it Tucker who like kind of lifts one of them, and then he just instantly kind of vomits.
Yeah,
it's very well done.
Creepy. Yeah. But it's like Michelle led them there.
Michelle did lead them there. Yeah, Mother Morticus or whatever it
Mother
is.
of Death.
Like I can't remember what comes up on Carl's little dice, and Carl is a good character too.
Another psychic character uses dice to communicate. I think it's in Mother of Death, Mother of Parker Crane.
Yeah. I can't remember what the Latin thing is, but it's something Morticus, and then he's like, oh, it's literal mother of death. Like, she's lured them there, pretending to be Elise, you know, speaking to them, but it's actually her, yeah.
Yeah. Should we talk like the final bit, like, because we have...
Yeah.
It's where it gets a bit weird.
Little bit weird.
Parker's pretty much fallen back into his old ways, and they've kind of worked out that it's not Josh or something up.
This is not Josh. Like, this is fucking Parker Josh, guys. And then Parker Josh kind of realizes it's game over. You know, the way he sees it, he's got no choice but to kill the Renee and to kill the kids.
Yeah.
As well.
Dalton realizes that the only way he can get his father back is to go into the further and bring him back. Yeah. Which is, I love that.
Returning the favour.
I love that, that returning the favour. But Renee's having to protect Dalton from Parker Josh, who's trying to kill them.
Yeah.
So he's probably going to traumatise Foster quite a bit, seeing his dad and is very murderous.
Yeah. I think Foster's just kind of done for, to be honest.
Which is when we get that reveal that Elise is in the further.
She is.
And it kind of hints that there's a heaven.
Yeah, because she wasn't always in the further.
No, she came back to help them.
Yeah.
And after I was like, for fuck's sake, she's back.
Here we go, she's back.
It almost feels like Tobin Bell in... I think I referenced this in the previous video. Tobin Bell in Saw.
Yeah.
So they definitely didn't know what to do with him after killing him off, so they kept bringing him back. Like, the next two films after this are prequels about Elise's life.
Yeah.
They definitely... Obviously, they planned it as one film, so they thought killing her off wouldn't be a problem, but they definitely enjoyed working with her. So she gets to come back and help Josh.
Mm.
They actually go to young Parker Crane.
Help me destroy the memories of her. It will set you free. Please, let me in. Open the door.
To ask him how to defeat his mother.
Yeah.
That's when they have to go to young Josh to lead to where, to point to where the bride in black.
Yeah.
So where their home is. It's so cool. I love the further in this one.
It's well done, and the thing I kind of like about the further too is it's easy to kind of, because it's basically, for all intents and purposes, meant to be a purgatory, of some kind, and purgatory is, traditionally for lost souls. Ones that, maybe either aren't aware that they're dead, or for whatever reason they can't move on. Maybe they're scared to move on because they know, if they move on, then they're going to the bad place. We don't know for certain, but that's kind of, I guess, what James Wan, the idea is that he's working with. But, so it's easy to kind of believe that, well, the further only harbours the bad spirits. Whereas actually, the more Insidious films that go on, no, there's actually a mix. It's bad ones, but there are also just some genuinely lost souls in there as well.
With unfinished business.
Unfinished business. And it's when Josh and Carl, before they go back into Josh's own house, and, we get that mirror scene of the first movie, he encounters a spirit. And the spirit is telling him...
He's got your baby.
He's got your baby. He's got your baby. He's got your baby.
But what's interesting is Josh can't see him.
No, only the psychic can see him. That is a bit of
so what else is there layers to the further that we just can't see?
But I really like that moment because...
That spirit is helping him.
It's creepy, but he is trying to help Josh, ultimately. He's trying to tell him that the long-haired ghoul is in Callie's bedroom.
Yeah.
He's he's got your baby, he's got your baby. So it's all right, the further... There's still so many mysteries to this place. And it's instantly when I see that ghost, I'm like, well, what are you trapped in here for?
Yeah.
You're what happened to you?
During this confrontation, Elise fights. There's a great shot where Michelle just kind of screams at them and they just fly clearly on a dolly.
Oh, it's so
out
good.
The door.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
Oh, it's the way she just it's, you know what? The way she's looking at Parker and then her attention is just diverted to Elise and Carl. It's just the way she slowly turns. Danielle Basutti or something, the actress is called. She's great.
Well, Elise defeats Michelle and bashes her brains in with a chair. Oh, and this is a bit we debated because that defeats the bride in black and allows Josh to return to his body.
Yeah.
I was the one when he returns and he's like...
Ow.
Yeah. It's like fitting himself back in.
Yeah.
Euston's like, why does that defeat Parker? From what we've seen of discussions of it and what we've discussed amongst ourselves, is it by destroying the memory? These are Parker's memories where they went to in the film, and by destroying the memories of his mother, that means there's no reason that he would become the Bride in Black, making the Bride in Black, not essentially move on to probably hell. But it's like it is a bit ambiguous as to why that defeats Parker.
Yeah.
But I think I see it as he is what he is because of his mother. And if you take that out of the equation, the Bride in Black would just disappear.
I agree with that. It makes total sense. I think again, it's just there's an argument to be made is by kind of making Parker's kind of evilness as a direct result of his mum and his mother's continuous influence. Does that take away a bit of his scare factor in a way? Does it take away a bit of his agency? It's all the mum.
To be fair, I think having him,
He's
seeing
not
him as
inherently
Josh through the
evil.
entire film actually just take a lot of the creepiness away from the Bride in Black character in itself anyway.
Yeah.
I think as soon as you start explaining something, everything loses its fear a little bit. It's like when we keep seeing Lipstick Face Demon does not take away from him.
There is...
But I like how well-rounded of the character he ended up being.
Yeah,
for a
true,
character
true.
that... I think the third film was the first time we actually see the Bride speak.
This is where you die.
All the rest of the time, we've only ever seen him speak either as a child, like one or two lines, or as Josh.
Yeah. Well, also worth saying as well, there's still a lot of gaps within Parker Crane's life because we see him as a boy...
And we see him as an elderly man.
And we see him as an elderly man. It's like, we have no idea what this guy was...
Then we see him as Parker Josh.
Yeah, and Parker Josh. But we have no idea what Parker Crane was like, in his 20s or in his 30s. It's like, was he a killer then? Had he just not adopted the Bride in Black persona? Like, what? There's gaps, and there's still mystery surrounding him. But yeah, I think it's just something that I think is worth pointing out. It's like, to what extent is the character inherently, a bad seed? And to what extent is it all his mother?
Yeah.
And the film kind of leans a little bit more towards it's his mother's influence, but doesn't
there's
necessarily
definitely hints of there, he enjoys it. But again, is that because maybe when he started killing, maybe that's when his mum started saying, Ghost of his mum might have started saying, well done.
Yeah.
You never know, maybe he
That's what he
enjoys
has to
killing
do.
because that's where he gets his dopamine and his...
That's maybe that's the only way he could get his mother's love.
Yeah.
Yeah. His mother's approval.
Obviously, eventually pushed him to castrate himself.
Yeah.
Which nearly killed him.
Yeah.
It was a failed castration.
It was...
Do you have any more notes on Insidious Chapter 2?
No, but I really, really like it, and I do think currently it's my favourite of the bunch.
It's just so well made.
Yeah, it is, and I'm so happy that we're getting a fifth one. Yeah. I'm really intrigued. I like the trailer. I like how we're back with the Lambert family.
Yeah, because the film kind of ends at Josh and Dalton agree that they need to forget their abilities. They need to forget everything.
Are you ready?
We're ready. Ready to forget once and for all. No more traveling, right?
Which is partially why I think they've not continued it for so long. Because how do you
bring this back?
How do you bring this back? And for enough of a gap, Jesus Christ, Dalton's grown up now.
Yeah.
From the trailer, we can kind of see... Well, we know Lipstick Face Demon's return, but Josh, he's having some memory problems. Potentially him and Renee aren't together anymore.
I think it leans very heavily. They've separated.
I also think his mum has died.
That's the funeral.
I think what the funeral is.
I'm willing to bet that's Lorraine's funeral.
I have a feeling we might see Elise.
I think we will.
I think we will, obviously. Then after they forget, that's when we go and... Tucker and Specs. Is that it? Tucker and Specs? They're continuing to investigate it now with Ghost Elise.
Yeah.
That's kind of fun, actually.
Yeah.
It's a fun idea, Ghost Hunters with a ghost sidekick.
Yeah.
They go to investigate another one, which, this is a weird link with the MCU, this one. There's a young Jenna Ortega there.
At the end, yeah.
And wasn't it the guy who played it? Ty something, isn't it? Ty...
Oh, Ty Simpkins.
Yeah. He was in another film with Jenna Ortega that year.
Was he?
Iron Man 3. Both films where he's more of the lead, and they never have a scene together. And
Yeah.
she has about the same amount of screen time. She plays it's like a politician's daughter who's only got one leg, and she's in that like one scene. But it's weird that like they both came out in the same year.
Back together again.
Yeah, but that was one of her first film roles.
Yeah, and she can see Elise.
Yeah, she can see Elise.
Her parents can't, but she can see Elise.
I don't think that means we're going to see Jenna in any other
No,
ones.
I don't think... No,
But that's when...
But it...
That's when we hear the crackling of the lipstick-faced demon. Elise looks towards the corner room off camera, like behind the camera.
Yeah.
And that's how it ends. And it's been 10 years and we've never had a payoff to that.
No, but I feel like chapter 5... Returning...
They've dropped the chapters, haven't they?
They have dropped it. To be honest, they should have dropped the chapters after 2.
Yeah.
As much as I do like 3, I don't think it should have been called chapter 3.
Because I think Insidious 4 isn't even called Insidious 4, it's just Insidious
Just the last key.
The Last Key.
But I am really... I'm looking forward to 5. I mean, I'm a big fan of the franchise anyway, but I'm happy to see the Lambert family back again, and...
Patrick Wilson directing is...
Like, you know... Yeah, exactly. And also, you know, you said, like, it feels like in 3, to get the lipstick face demon back just felt like a bit of a cheap kind of, like...
Yeah.
You know, oh, we'll just throw him in for the sake
to
of
make
throwing
the
him
Bride
in.
in Black Elise's nemesis makes more sense than having the
Yes,
lipstick
it
face demon
does.
constantly pop up.
I guess it does.
But she doesn't even see him.
No.
That's the thing. It just
Oh yeah, it just like looms in. Like it's a bad comp as well.
it's a
isn't
really
it?
bad comp.
It just like zooms in.
It makes more sense in 4, which when we eventually do a video on those ones, I'll explain an issue that I have with Elise in particular.
But we are both in 5. We're both anticipating that we're going to see Lipstick Face again.
He's in the trailer.
Which oh yeah, but I mean, like,
Yeah.
no, but I mean in terms of like how big of a part he's going to play.
Yeah.
But I think he's going to feature like pretty heavily, and it makes sense because Dalton is back.
Yeah.
And we always associate Dalton with the Lipstick Face demon. They got history. So yeah, I'm excited.
We most likely will see Elise, and I'm fascinated by it. It's been so long because they were working on for a while. Jason Blum was trying to get a Sinister crossover called In Sinister off the ground, and it never went anywhere.
Yeah.
Because that's been it's been a couple of years since the last one, and they've all done really well.
Yeah.
Like, I think the 4th one, even though I think the 4th one is the weakest, made the most money.
And there's still fun to be had with watching the
There
4th one.
There is still fun to be had. That's my favourite portrayal of Elise because she's down in the dumps for the entire film.
Yeah, I know.
It's there at the last scene where she's like, ooh, and I'm like, oh, go away. Go away, happy Elise.
I think she's going to be in 5. I don't know how, but
weirdly,
I feel
I
like she
kind of want her to be at this point because I think
they can't do an Insidious movie without her.
Well, she is technically in the trailer. It's like there's pre-recordings of her, but what I mean is not pre-recordings, not like Randy and Scream 3.
Yeah.
I think she will appear as a ghost.
Yeah.
Again.
Yeah.
So it depends like what Specs and Tucker have been up to for the past 10 years.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So yeah, that's Insidious Chapter 2. It's always on some kind of streaming. In fact, I know it's on Prime, it's on Shudder, and it's on Netflix free to watch at the moment. Yeah. I think the only one that's not free to watch at the minute is the 4th one. Right?
Is 4, yeah.
Yeah, we had to rent that one when we rewatched all of them. I imagine most people will have seen these films or know how iconic they are at this point.
Yeah.
And I'm just quite excited to have another one's like the Conjuring universe kind of took over the place that Insidious had because it became much bigger. But I always think Insidious is the scarier franchise.
Ooh, really?
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure.
Ooh.
Just in terms of like straight up scares, yeah, it is.
Ooh, okay. What is scarier, The Conjuring or Insidious? Because I don't know if I've got an answer for that.
Yeah. So thanks a lot, guys.
Also, what is the significance of the SI? Does anyone know?
It's the...
Please tell me.
Yeah, we can't seem to find out because the letters are slightly different in all of them. Obviously, in 3, it's like there's just like the 3 eyes.
Yeah, but the SI. I'm putting that out there. Like,
does anyone
actually know?
Again, is it just creepy design for creepy design's sake?
It's been driving me mad for like 13 years or whatever. How long it's been.
Honestly, I didn't pay that much attention until it was pointed out to me. We'll see you next week, guys.
Bye.